Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into something a little darker, a world of frozen steppes, blood-soaked battlefields, and the weight of an empire that could crush your soul. We're diving into what it was really like to be Chinggis Khan. Forget the glorious conqueror Hollywood painted for you. The truth? You probably wouldn't survive a single winter on those Mongolian plains. So before we ride into this darkness together, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're ready for the raw, unfiltered truth of history. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's always incredible to see who's brave enough to join us on these midnight journeys through the past. Now dim those lights, maybe grab something warm to drink. Turn on a fan for that soft background whisper of wind across the steppes, and let's ease into tonight's tale together. The story of a man whose very name still echoes like thunder across 8 centuries, and why becoming him would have been your worst nightmare. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1162 inside a Mongol jurda. The stench of dried cheese, human sweat, and something you pray isn't mold hits your nostrils like a sledgehammer. Welcome to your new life as Temujin, the boy who would become Chinggis Khan, conqueror of the largest land empire in human history. But here's the thing, you're not going to make it. You're clutching something in your tiny fist. It's a clot of blood the size of a knucklebone, apparently a sign that you're destined for greatness. Your mother, Lady Holem, looks at you with a mixture of hope and terror. She should be terrified, because your father, Chief Yushki, just raided a Tatar camp and stole your name from an enemy warrior he captured. That's right, your very identity is stolen goods. But wait, it gets worse. Your father didn't just happen upon your mother either. He kidnapped her from another man on her wedding day. Picture this. Your mother Holem is traveling to her wedding when 3 men on horseback surround her cart. Your father Yushki sees her beauty and decides he wants her for himself. Her original husband Chiildu flees for his life while your mother throws her shirt at him, telling him to smell my fragrance and remember her. This is your family's love story. Romance in 1162 Mongolia involves a lot more horses and kidnapping than you're probably comfortable with. When you're 9 years old, your father decides it's time to find you a wife, not a playdate, a wife. You're 9. In medieval Mongolia, childhood ends the moment you can stay on a horse without falling off. So off you go with dear old dad to find a suitable girl among your mother's relatives. Along the way, you meet Chief Day II, who takes one look at you and declares this boy has fire in his eyes and light in his face. Then he tells your father about a prophetic dream involving a white falcon carrying the sun and moon landing on his hand. You're probably thinking this sounds promising. It's not. Day II has a 10-year-old daughter named Berta. Your father immediately arranges your engagement. But here's where medieval parenting really shines. Your father leaves you 9-year-old boy alone with your future in-laws and rides home. His parting advice? Don't let the dogs scare you. That's it. No phone number, no pickup date. Just watch out for dogs. And off he goes into the sunset. 3 days into your father's journey home, he makes a fatal mistake. He's thirsty, sees some Tatars having a feast, and thinks, free drinks. The Tatars recognize him immediately. Remember, he's been raiding their people for years. They offer him food and drink, laced with poison. Your father makes it home, barely, and calls for Munglik, his trusted friend. With his dying breath, he tells Munglik, take care of my young sons and bring back Temujin quickly. Congratulations, you're now 9 years old, engaged to a girl you barely know, living with her family, and your father just died of poison. Oh, and your stepmother and half-brothers back home are about to abandon you. But surely your tribe will rally around their dead chief's family, right? Wrong. When Munglik brings you home, you discover that medieval politics make Game of Thrones look like a friendly neighborhood barbecue. Your father's relatives have decided that supporting a widow with young children is simply too much trouble. Lady Urbai and Sokhotai, 2 queens from your extended family, make it crystal clear. Your husband is dead, your children aren't grown up yet. So why should we share our food with you? They pack up the entire tribe and leave you, your mother, your brothers, and a few loyal servants to starve on the steppes. Your mother Holem transforms from grieving widow to fierce survivor overnight. Picture a medieval single mother in one of the harshest environments on earth, with no welfare system, no grocery stores, and winter coming. She puts on her tall ceremonial hat, tightens her sash, and teaches you and your brothers how to survive on whatever you can dig out of the ground. You're eating wild onions, garlic, elm seeds, and whatever fish you can catch in the river. Your brothers are making fish hooks out of bent needles. This isn't camping, This is desperation eating while your former allies ride away with full bellies and warm gers. Here's where your moral compass takes its first major hit. You and your brother Kassar catch a fish. Your half-brothers Bekta and Belgute steal it from you. This happens again with a bird you shot down. Your mother tries to calm things down with a speech about unity, but you're past listening. You and Kassar track Bekta to a hill where he's watching horses. You approach from two directions, arrows nocked. Bekta sees you coming and delivers what might be the most heartbreaking speech in medieval literature. We can't even handle our enemies, the Tayichits. And you want to fight each other. How can you think to do this when we have no friends except our shadows, no fat except our horsetails? Don't kill me. Think of Belgute. You shoot him anyway, both of you, from front and back. You're 13 years old, and you've just murdered your half-brother over a fish and a bird. Your mother's reaction when you come home. She compares you to a rabid dog eating its own afterbirth, a panther on a mountain, a monster swallowing prey alive. She's not wrong. Remember those Tayichit people your mother mentioned. They haven't forgotten about you. Their leader, Tarkatai the Fat, decides you're growing up to be dangerous. He arrives with soldiers saying, "The lambs are shedding their fleeces, the sheep are growing up." Translation: you're no longer a harmless child. Your family tries to hide in the forest, building stockades and fighting back, but you're outnumbered and outgunned. The Tayichit shout, "Send out Temujin, we don't need the rest of you." So you try to escape through the forest on horseback. Your saddle falls off Midias, twice. You take this as a warning from heaven and hide in a thicket for 9 days without food. Finally, desperation drives you out, and the Tayichits capture you immediately. Now you're wearing a kango, a wooden collar that keeps your hands locked in front of you. The Tayichits pass you around like a trophy, making you stay one night in each family's camp. You're a living reminder of their power and your helplessness. But medieval Mongolia has holidays too. On the 16th day of the first summer month, the Red Circle Day, everyone gets drunk and careless. Your guard is weak, young, and probably drunk. You club him with your wooden collar and escape into the river, lying in the water with only your face above the surface while they search for you. Here's where you get your first lesson in the value of allies. A man named Sorkan Shira sees you hiding but doesn't turn you in. He tells you, "Lie where you are, I shall not tell." Later, his sons help you escape, burn your wooden collar, and hide you in a cart full of sheep's wool. When searchers come looking, Sorkan Shira asks, "In such heat, who could bear to hide inside wool?" They leave without finding you. These people save your life and ask for nothing in return. Remember this moment. It's going to shape how you treat loyalty for the rest of your life. You make it back to your family, but safety is temporary in medieval Mongolia. Thieves steal your 8 horses, your family's most valuable possessions, and your means of survival and mobility. Without horses, you're as good as dead on the steppes. Your brothers want to pursue the thieves, but you know it's your responsibility as the eldest. You track them for 3 days on a borrowed horse, until you find a young man milking mares near a large herd. His name is Borshu, and he's about to become your first real friend and most loyal general. When you ask about your stolen horses, Borshu doesn't just point you in the right direction. He abandons his work, hides his equipment in the field, and joins your pursuit without even asking his father's permission. All men suffer in common, he tells you. I will accompany you. You find your horses at a large camp and successfully steal them back, but the owners pursue you. One rider gets close with a lasso, and Borshu offers to shoot him. You refuse. "I do not want you hurt for my sake." This partnership, risking everything for someone you just met, exemplifies the bonds that will later hold your empire together. When you offer to share the recovered horses, Borshu refuses any payment. His father Nak the Rich scolds them both when they return, but Borshu doesn't care. This is loyalty. Remember it, because it's rarer than gold and more valuable than armies. You're now old enough to collect your bride Bertie, but first you need to find her family again. The Mongol steppes don't have street addresses, and people move with their herds. Day Sechin is delighted to see you've survived your adventures and happily hands over his daughter along with a valuable black sable jacket as dowry. This jacket becomes your diplomatic currency. You take it to Toriel, chief of the Kerid people, who was sworn brother to your father. In medieval Mongolia, sworn brotherhood and creates bonds stronger than blood. Toriel accepts the jacket and promises, "I will bring together the people who abandoned you. In return for the sable jacket, I will unite your scattered people." You're starting to build a power base, one relationship at a time. But happiness is short-lived in medieval Mongolia. Remember your mother's kidnapping story. The Merkits remember it too, and they want revenge. 3 Merkit chiefs Nax Totu the Trembler, Daetir the Sly, and Churitai the Quarriel decide to settle old scores by taking your women just as your father took theirs. They attack at dawn. An old woman named Chorichin hears horses approaching and wakes your mother. The earth is shaking. I can hear swift horses' hooves. Your family scatters in panic. There aren't enough horses for everyone, so Berta gets left behind. The old woman hides her in a black-covered cart, but the Merkits find them anyway. As they drag Bertie away, she screams your name, but you're already fleeing into the mountains. You spend days hiding on Mount Birken while the Merkits circle it 3 times looking for you. They give up and take Berta back to their territory, where she becomes the wife of Chilja Burko, a Merkit warrior. You're now 19 years old. Your wife has been kidnapped and given to another man. You have maybe a dozen followers and a handful of horses. Your mother's family abandoned you. Your father's killers are still out there, and winter is coming. Most people would give up, but you're not most people. You're about to become Chinggis Khan. You send messengers to Toril and Jamuka, your sworn brother from childhood, with identical messages. The 3 Merkits made my bed empty. Are we not one family? How can we gain vengeance? My heart is broken. Toril keeps his promise. He'll bring 20,000 men to form the right flank of your army. Jamuka matches this with 20,000 for the left flank. That's 40,000 warriors ready to fight for you. Not bad for a supposedly powerless orphan, but this is where medieval warfare gets complex. Jamuka, your sworn brother, gives detailed intelligence about exactly where each Merkit leader is hiding. Tuktot the nervous takes the flapping of saddlecloth for beating drums. He must be on the Buur steppe. De Rusan the treacherous flees when he sees the swaying of bowknock and quiver. He must be on Talcon Island between the Orkun and Selenga rivers. Tuktot Tida Mala the disputer flees into dense forest when tumbleweed blows. He must be on the Turigi steppe. Your allies arrive 3 days late to the rendezvous. Jamuka is annoyed. When we Mongols say yes, are we not bound by oath? We should cast from the ranks those who fall short of the agreement. Medieval punctuality matters when you're planning revenge raids. Your combined armies cross the Kilco River on rafts bound with sedges and attack the Merkits at dawn. The assault is devastating and poetic. They entered Tuktot-Baki's yurt through the smoke hole, smashed and knocked down the doorframe, robbed and killed his wife and son, broke and knocked down his sacred doorframe, and crippled and robbed his entire people. The Merkits flee in panic down the Selenga River in the darkness. You ride among the panicking fugitives shouting Berta, Berta, through the chaos. Then you hear her voice calling back. In the moonlight, you see her running toward you. Both she and old Kurajin recognize your horse and grab the reins. You dismount and embrace your wife after months of separation, not knowing what trauma she's endured or whether she's pregnant by her captor. This rescue mission marks your first major military victory. You've commanded a force of 40,000 men and succeeded in a complex night assault against a mobile enemy. Word of this victory will spread across the steppes, but victory comes with complications. Berta gives birth to a son named Jochi. 9 months later. The timing is ambiguous. You never publicly question Jochi's parentage, but the doubt will haunt him throughout his life and create succession problems decades later. You also capture prisoners from the raid, including a 5-year-old Merkit boy named Kuchu. He had fire in his eyes, your soldiers report. You give him to your mother to raise. This boy with fire in his eyes becomes one of your adopted brothers, showing your talent for incorporating former enemies into your inner circle. The Merkit chief Chilja Burko, who held Berta captive, escapes the slaughter, but delivers a prophetic speech as he flees. The Black Crow, though fated to eat scraps of skin, wished to eat goose and crane. I, Chilja, unfortunate and ugly, laid hands on the lady, the queen, and brought calamity on all the Merkits. My own black head will receive a blow. I have only one life to save. He's right. You'll hunt the Merkits to near extinction in the coming years. This Merkit campaign teaches you lessons that will shape your imperial strategy. First, loyal allies are worth more than gold. Tuaril and Jamuka kept their promises when it mattered. Second, intelligence wins wars. Jamuka's detailed knowledge of Merkit positions made your surprise attack possible. Third, mercy and adoption can be more powerful than slaughter. The people you spare and incorporate become your strength. Fourth, revenge is a debt that must be paid in full. The Merkits started this cycle by kidnapping your mother. You're going to finish it. You're 20 years old, you've led your first major military campaign, and you've tasted victory. but you're still just a minor chief with a few hundred followers in a world of thousands of tribes and millions of enemies. The Jin dynasty controls northern China with hundreds of thousands of troops. The Song dynasty controls southern China with even more. The Khwarezm Empire spans from the Caspian Sea to Afghanistan. The Karakitai controls Central Asia. These are the real powers of your world, and they barely know you exist. But that's about to change, because you're not just building an army. You're creating something new, a confederation based on merit rather than birth, loyalty rather than kinship, and shared victory rather than traditional tribute. Your followers include former enemies, adopted brothers, and men from dozens of different tribes united only by their faith in your leadership. This is the foundation of what will become the largest contiguous land empire in human history. But for now, you're still just Temujin, a young chief with a rescued wife, a newborn son of questionable parentage, and the growing reputation as someone who pays his debts. The steppes are watching. The sedentary civilizations beyond the steppes have no idea what's coming. Sweet dreams, Temujin. Your legend has only just begun, but already the patterns that will define your empire are taking shape. The bonds of loyalty you're forging will outlast kingdoms. The enemies you're making will remember your name for generations, and the boy who clutched a blood clot in his newborn fist is learning that destiny isn't given pay, it's taken, one victory at a time. The steppes remember everything, and they're watching a future emperor learn his trade. And as you drift off to sleep in your chair, with Bertie safe beside you and your horses grazing outside, know that tomorrow will bring new challenges, new enemies, and new opportunities to prove that sometimes the discarded children of forgotten tribes can reshape the world. The fire in your eyes is just beginning to burn. You wake up, and for a moment you forget where you are. Then reality crashes down like an avalanche in the old-time mountains. You're Temujin, but that name feels like it belongs to someone else now. The year is 1206, and yesterday, the most powerful men on the steppes knelt before you and proclaimed you Chinggis Khan, universal ruler. Congratulations, you've just become the most hunted man in Asia. The morning air in your chair carries the scent of burning dung fuel and the metallic tang of weapons being sharpened. Outside, 129,000 warriors await your commands. Each one of them could kill you in your sleep if they decided you weren't worthy of the title they've given you. No pressure. Your wife Bertie sits beside you, and even she looks different now. Yesterday, she was the wife of a tribal leader. Today she's the empress of an empire that doesn't exist yet. One you'll have to carve out with blood and iron, or die trying. Her eyes hold both pride and terror. She watches you process what you've become. My lord, comes a voice from outside your tent. Even the way people address you has changed. The generals await your pleasure. Your pleasure. What a joke. Your pleasure would be to crawl back under these furs and pretend this is all a dream. Instead, you force yourself to sit up, every muscle in your body screaming from decades of warfare, and prepare to face a day that will likely end with someone trying to kill you. Welcome to being the most powerful man in the world. Try not to die before breakfast. The numbers don't make sense, and that's what should terrify you most. You command fewer than 130,000 Mongol warriors. Sounds impressive until you realize you're planning to conquer civilizations with populations in the millions. The Jin dynasty to your south. 2 million square miles, 50 million people, armies that dwarf yours 10 to 1. The Khwarezmian Empire to the west. Even larger, with cities so wealthy, they use gold as decoration on their buildings. You're essentially planning to mug the entire known world with a really good cavalry unit. Your advisors, men like Borakal, Mukali, and Jebe, spread maps before you made of animal hide and marked with blood. They point to cities that would take your entire army 6 months to walk around. They describe walls so thick that siege engines bounce off them like toys. They speak of armies so vast they darken the horizon. How do we do it? Asks Subotai, your youngest general and possibly your most brilliant. The answer should be, we don't. Any sane person would look at these odds and decide to stay home, tend their herds and die peacefully in their beds. But sanity is a luxury you can't afford. You're Chinggis Khan now, and that title comes with certain expectations like conquering literally everyone. You trace your finger along the trade routes marked on the map. The Silk Road, rivers of gold flowing between east and west, protected by armies that have never lost a major battle. Your finger stops at Bukhara, then Samarkand, then Beijing. Cities so rich their names have become synonymous with impossible wealth. We'll take them all, you say quietly. The silence that follows is so complete you can hear the wind whistling through the smoke hole above your head. Then Borakal, loyal, dependable Borakal, who saved your son's life, leans forward. My lord, he says carefully, the mathematics. You interrupt. Assume we fight like everyone else. You stand up, and suddenly the chair feels too small to contain what you're planning. Every army in the world plants their feet and pushes forward until one side breaks. They siege cities by surrounding them and waiting. Oh! They follow roads and rivers, because that's how armies are supposed to move. You point to the vast emptiness between the civilized areas on the map. What do civilized armies fear most? The steppes. Jebe answers immediately. No supply lines, no roads, no shelter. Exactly, you smile, and your generals suddenly look nervous. They're starting to understand. Every enemy we face will assume we're trapped by the same limitations they are. They'll fortify their borders and wait for us to siege their cities like civilized armies do. You trace a wide arc around the marked territories. We'll come from where they don't expect us, from where they think no army can survive. We'll move faster than their messages, strike harder than their nightmares, and disappear before they can respond. And if we fail, Mukali asks, the question hangs in the air like smoke. If you fail, you don't just lose a battle, you lose everything. Your people, your family, your empire, that hasn't been born yet. The steppes are littered with the bones of tribal leaders who dreamed too big. Then we'll die as wolves, you say simply. Better than living as sheep. You're about to revolutionize warfare, and the civilized world has no idea what's coming. The traditional way armies fight is beautifully simple. You line up your best warriors, march them toward the enemy, and push until someone breaks. It's been working for thousands of years, so why change it? Because you're not building a traditional army. You stand in the middle of your war camp watching 10,000 men practice maneuvers that don't exist in any military manual. What you're creating looks like chaos to outside observers, but it's actually the most sophisticated military machine the world has ever seen. Tell me about the Roman legions. You command the Chinese engineer who's recently joined your service. His knowledge of siegecraft is impressive, but his understanding of military history is even more valuable. Disciplined, my lord. They conquered the known world through organization, engineering, and superior tactics. Each legion was a self-contained unit that could operate independently while remaining part of a larger strategy. And where are they now? Gone, my lord. Hundreds of years gone. You nod. Every great military innovation eventually becomes obsolete when someone finds a way to counter it. The Romans conquered their world, then grew comfortable and predictable. Their enemies learned to fight legions, and the empire crumbled. You won't make that mistake. Your army doesn't look like any army in history, because you're not fighting any war in history. You're waging campaigns across distances that would break traditional forces against enemies who've never faced anything like you. Show me the arrow storm, you call out. A unit of 1,000 mounted archers spreads across the practice field. In perfect synchronization, they wheel and turn, each rider maintaining exact spacing while firing arrows with mechanical precision. They can put 3,000 arrows in the air simultaneously, rain death from any direction, and disappear before the enemy can blink. But that's just the beginning. Forest fighting, you command. The same unit immediately dismounts and melts into the tree line like ghosts. Within minutes they've surrounded your position from angles you didn't know existed. These men can fight on horseback across open steppes, on foot through dense forests, or dismounted in siege situations. Most armies specialize. Yours adapts, and if they take cover, asks your newest general, a former enemy who's proven his loyalty through service. You smile and gesture toward another group of men setting up strange contraptions of wood and rope. Then we introduce them to Chinese engineering. The demonstration that follows would give civilized armies nightmares. Siege engines that can be assembled in hours, not weeks. Catapults that throw not stones but pots of burning oil that spread fire through enemy formations. Arrows that whistle as they fly, designed to break enemy morale before they kill enemy soldiers. But the real innovation isn't in your weapons. It's in your men. Every soldier in your army is cross-trained in at least 3 different combat roles. Your heavy cavalry can dismount and fight as infantry. Your archers can operate siege engines. Your engineers can fight as cavalry. If you lose half your army, the survivors can still perform every essential function. More importantly, every unit can operate independently for weeks at a time. They carry their own supplies, make their own equipment, and solve their own problems. Traditional armies collapse when their supply lines get cut. Yours just gets more dangerous. How long can they last without support? asks the Chinese engineer. How long can they kill without support? You correct him. That's the question that matters. The answer, you've discovered through careful testing, is about 3 months. 3 months during which a unit of your warriors can live off the land, maintain their equipment, and continue carrying out complex military operations without any contact with the main army. 3 months is longer than most wars last. It's definitely longer than most enemies expect to fight. You watch your men practice the maneuver you call the wolf hunt. A coordinated attack involving units positioned hundreds of miles apart, all striking simultaneously at precise moments without any communication between them. The timing comes from reading the stars, the seasons, and the behavior of their enemies. No army in the world could counter this, because no army in the world has ever faced it. My lord, Subotai approaches, covered in dust from the training exercises. The men are ready. Ready. Such a simple word for something so revolutionary. These aren't just soldiers, they're a weapon, unlike anything the world has seen. Mobile, adaptive, utterly ruthless, and completely loyal to a dream that most people would call impossible. You look out across your camp. Tomorrow, you'll point this weapon at the Jin dynasty, a civilization that stood for centuries, protected by walls that have never been breached, defended by armies that have never known defeat. They have no idea what's coming. The hardest part of being Chinggis Khan isn't the battles, it's the meetings. You sit in council with your generals, and the conversation that should excite you is making you sick to your stomach. They're discussing casualty estimates, with the detached professionalism of men who've grown comfortable with mass death. If we take the northern route through Jin territory, Mukali explains, pointing at the map, we can avoid their main armies for the first 3 months. Minimal losses but slower progress. The southern route hits their supply centers immediately. Jebba counters, higher initial casualties, but we cripple their ability to reinforce. They're talking about the lives of your warriors like pieces on a game board, and the terrible thing is they're right to do so. This is what leadership means at your level, turning human beings into strategic resources and spending them as efficiently as possible. What are the numbers? You ask, though you're not sure you want to know. Northern route, approximately 15,000 casualties to secure the border region. Southern route, 25,000, but we cut their reinforcement capabilities by 60%, 10,000 lives. The difference between these strategies is 10,000 of your warriors who will die or live based on your decision. 10,000 men who have wives, children, parents who love them. 10,000 futures that will be ended by a choice you make while sitting in a comfortable tent, drinking fermented mare's milk. The weight of that responsibility sits on your chest like a stone. But here's what makes it worse. You can't let it show. Population displacement estimates. You continue, your voice steady despite the nausea building in your throat. Jin dynasty territory houses approximately 3 million civilians in the target areas. Standard siege protocols suggest they continue speaking, but you're no longer listening to the words. You're calculating the mathematics of conquest, and the numbers are horrifying. Every city you take means thousands of civilian deaths. Every territory you claim means displacing populations that have lived there for generations. You're not just building an empire, you're orchestrating the destruction of entire civilizations. The Chinese engineer who's joined your staff shifts uncomfortably. He's starting to understand what your success will mean for his people, but he doesn't speak up, because he knows that protesting won't stop what's coming. It will just ensure he doesn't live to see it. My lord, Boracle's voice brings you back to the present. Your orders, all eyes are on you. These men have followed you through impossible campaigns, survived battles that should have killed them all, and conquered enemies who outmatched them in every measurable way. They trust your judgment completely. That trust is another weight you carry. These generals aren't just following orders. They're betting their lives and the lives of everyone they command on your ability to make the right choices. If you guess wrong, if you miscalculate, if you let emotion cloud your strategic thinking, thousands of people die. We take the southern route, you decide. Fast, brutal, decisive. The longer this campaign lasts, the more people die on both sides. It's the most coldly practical decision you've ever made, and it feels like swallowing poison. But the alternative, prolonging the conflict to minimize initial casualties, would ultimately kill more people. Sometimes mercy and cruelty look exactly the same from a distance. Siege protocols, my lord. Here it comes, the question you've been dreading. Standard offer, you say quietly. Surrender immediately, and live under our protection. Resist and face the consequences. And the consequences, complete destruction, no survivors. The silence that follows feels like a funeral. You're establishing a reputation for absolute ruthlessness, not because you enjoy killing, but because you want to avoid it. If word spreads that resisting you means certain death, fewer cities will resist. Paradoxically, demonstrating your willingness to commit genocide might prevent you from having to actually do it. But that's cold comfort when you're the one giving the orders. The Chinese cities have never faced Mongol siege tactics, the engineer offers quietly. They may not understand what resistance means. Then we'll teach them, you reply, hating yourself for meaning it. As the meeting breaks up and your generals file out to prepare for war, you're left alone with the maps and the weight of what you've just decided. Somewhere in those marked territories are children who will never grow up because of choices you made tonight. Families that will be scattered because you chose efficiency over mercy. This is the price of empire, not just your own soul, but the souls of everyone who trusts you enough to follow your vision. You blow out the oil lamp and sit in darkness, listening to the wind across the steppes. Tomorrow, your army moves out. Tomorrow you begin the transformation from tribal leader to world conqueror. Tomorrow the body count starts climbing toward numbers that will define your legacy. You wonder if Berta still sees the young man she married when she looks at you, or if she sees what you're becoming. You wonder if your children will understand why their father had to become a monster to build them a world worth inheriting. Most of all, you wonder if the man you were before would recognize the man you're becoming. The answer, you suspect, is no. And that might be the most terrifying thing of all. Your first major campaign shouldn't work, and everyone knows it. You're attacking the Jin dynasty with 100,000 warriors against their million-man army. You're besieging cities that have never fallen with siege engines you've barely tested. You're fighting in territory where a single wrong turn could strand your entire force without supplies or reinforcements. By every reasonable measure, you should be dead within 6 months. Instead, you're rewriting the rules of warfare so fast that your enemies can't keep up. The key is speed, not just moving fast. Anyone can march their army to death, but thinking fast, adapting fast, and striking fast. While your enemies are still planning their response to your last attack, you're already 3 moves ahead. Beijing's outer defenses have fallen. Jeb reports his horse still steaming from the ride. Garrison surrendered after 4 days. 4 days. A siege that should have taken months lasted 4 days. The Chinese defenders had prepared for a traditional siege: months of encirclement, slow starvation, formal negotiations. Instead, your forces hit them with concentrated arrow fire, siege engines that appeared overnight, and psychological warfare that convinced them resistance was hopeless. Casualties, you ask? Minimal. Most of the garrison joined our forces after surrender. This is the pattern that's emerging across your campaign. Cities that expect prolonged sieges face overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. Defenders who prepare for traditional warfare encounter tactics they've never imagined. Enemies who plan to wear you down with distance and logistics discover that your army thrives on conditions that would destroy conventional forces. But the real secret weapon isn't your tactics, it's your communication system. Relay from the western column, another messenger announces, dismounting before his horse has stopped moving. Kaifeng secured, 40,000 prisoners requesting integration into our forces. The message just delivered traveled 800 miles in 6 days, passed between riders who can navigate by stars alone, and horses that can run distances that would kill European war horses. Your enemies are still using messengers who follow roads and change horses at established stations. By the time their commands reach the battlefield, the battle is over, and your forces have moved on to targets they haven't even identified yet. You study the map covered in colored markers showing the positions of units scattered across 1,000 miles of contested territory. Each marker represents a force that can operate independently for months while remaining part of your larger strategy. Your enemies see chaos and assume you've lost control of your army. They don't realize the chaos is intentional. Status of the northern flank: crossing the Yellow River as of yesterday. No significant resistance. Local populations requesting terms. Southern flank: 40 miles ahead of schedule. They've bypassed 3 fortified positions and are moving directly toward their primary objectives. This is what victory looks like when you abandon conventional military thinking. Instead of one massive army moving slowly toward a single target, you have multiple forces attacking different objectives simultaneously. Each force moves faster than the enemy can respond, strikes harder than they can prepare for, and disappears before they can coordinate a counterattack. Your enemies keep trying to find your main army so they can force a decisive battle. They don't understand that your main army is everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. My lord, Subutai approaches with a disturbing report. The Chinese generals are requesting a negotiated settlement. Already? They're offering tribute, territorial concessions, and a royal marriage alliance. Standard terms for ending a border conflict. You almost laugh. They still don't understand what they're facing. They think this is a traditional war between neighboring states that will end with some territorial adjustments and a formal treaty. They're offering you a slice of their empire in exchange for peace. They don't realize you're not interested in a slice. You want the whole thing. Counteroffer, you decide. Complete surrender, integration of their military forces under our command, administrative positions for their nobles who prove their loyalty, standard protection for civilians who submit, and if they refuse, then we demonstrate why surrender was their best option. The demonstration when it comes is swift and terrible. A Jin army of 50,000 veteran troops meets your forces in what they believe will be a traditional set-piece battle. Instead, they face coordinated attacks from 7 different directions by units they didn't know existed, supported by siege engines that shouldn't be mobile and tactics that shouldn't be possible. The battle lasts 6 hours. When it's over, the Chinese understand that this isn't a war they can win through conventional means. 3 weeks later, Beijing falls, not through siege, not through starvation, but through a carefully orchestrated campaign of psychological warfare that convinces the defenders that resistance is futile. The city gates open from the inside, and your forces march in without losing a single warrior. How? The captured Chinese general asks as he's brought before you. How is this possible? You could explain the logistics networks that keep your army supplied across impossible distances. You could describe the communication systems that coordinate attacks across thousands of miles. You could detail the training programs that create warriors who can adapt to any combat situation. Instead, you say something simpler: we don't fight the war you're prepared for. That night, as you stand in the palace that ruled over 50 million people just yesterday, you realize you've achieved something that shouldn't be possible. You've conquered one of the world's great civilizations in less than a year, with minimal casualties to your own forces. The victory should feel triumphant. Instead, it feels ominous. If you can do this to the Jin dynasty, what's to stop you from doing it to everyone else? The reports keep coming, and they're all impossible. Khwarezmian Empire, my lord. Borders confirmed. Population estimates suggest 15 million inhabitants across 2 million square miles. You trace the boundaries on your map with one finger. The Khwarezmian Empire stretches from the Caspian Sea to the Persian Gulf, controlling trade routes that generate more wealth than most kingdoms see in a lifetime. Their cities, Bukhara, Samarkand, Urgench, are names whispered with reverence by merchants across the known world. They're also your next target. Military strength, you ask, though you're not sure you want to know the answer. Professional army estimated at 400,000 soldiers, veteran units with experience fighting nomadic raiders, fortified cities with walls that have never been breached, supply networks that could sustain prolonged siege warfare. The numbers should be daunting. They would be daunting to any sane military leader. 400,000 professional soldiers against your 150,000 nomads, fortified positions against mobile tactic, established supply lines against your policy of living off conquered territory. By every conventional measure, attacking the Khwarezmian Empire would be suicide. Intelligence reports, Subutai spreads additional documents across your campaign table. Shah Alauddin Muhammad controls the empire, but his authority isn't absolute. Regional governors maintain semi-independent power bases, religious tensions between Sunni and Shia populations, trade disputes between merchant classes and military nobility. This is more encouraging. Every empire looks monolithic from the outside, but political intelligence reveals the fractures you can exploit. The Khwarezmian Empire isn't a unified force. It's a collection of competing interests held together by convenience and tradition, and they've never faced Mongol tactics. No, my lord, their military doctrine assumes siege warfare, traditional cavalry charges, and prolonged campaigns with established supply lines. They've been successful against Arab raiders and Turkish nomads, but nothing comparable to our forces. You lean back in your chair and consider the implications. The Khwarezmian Empire controls territory larger than Western Europe, commands resources that dwarf your entire nation's wealth, and fields armies that outnumber yours 3 to 1. They're also completely unprepared for what you're about to do to them. Deployment timeline? We can have advance units moving within 2 weeks. Main force deployment in 6 weeks. Full campaign readiness in 3 months. 3 months to prepare for a war that will determine whether you're remembered as a great conqueror or as an ambitious fool who overextended himself. 3 months to organize the logistics for moving 150,000 warriors across 2,000 miles of hostile territory. What about the other fronts? China remains stable under our administration. Garrison forces are maintaining control with minimal local resistance. The Jin integration is proceeding ahead of schedule. Their military units are adapting well to Mongol command structure. This is perhaps the most remarkable aspect of your conquests. The territories you take don't just submit, they integrate. Chinese engineers are improving your siege weapons. Former Jin cavalry units are learning Mongol tactics. Administrative systems are being merged rather than replaced. You're not just conquering empires, you're absorbing them. Korean situation, tribute arrangements in place. No military intervention required. Local rulers are maintaining autonomy in exchange for acknowledging Mongol supremacy. Another pattern emerging. Smart enemies recognize that cooperation is more profitable than resistance. The Korean kingdoms looked at what happened to China and decided that maintaining their independence under your protection was preferable to facing your army direct. Not everyone will be that intelligent. Estimated timeline for Khwarezmian campaign. Subutai producer calculations that must have taken days to compile. Optimistic scenario, 18 months for complete conquest. Realistic scenario, 3 years. Pessimistic scenario, prolonged war of attrition, lasting 5 to 7 years. 5 to 7 years, fighting a defensive empire with unlimited resources while maintaining control over territories you've already conquered. Managing supply lines across distances that dwarf any previous military campaign. Keeping your warriors motivated through years of foreign warfare against enemies who have every advantage except experience fighting you. The logistics alone should be impossible. Prepare the deployment orders, you decide. The silence that follows your decision feels heavy with unspoken consequences. Your generals understand what you're attempting. You're planning to conquer the known world with armies that shouldn't exist, using tactics that shouldn't work, across distances that shouldn't be manageable. My lord, Borokel says quietly, if we fail, then we fail attempting something unprecedented, you finish. But we won't fail. The confidence in your voice surprises you. By any rational calculation, what you're planning should be impossible. But you've been accomplishing impossible things for so long that impossible has started to feel routine. That night, as you study reports from across your growing empire, you realize you're no longer planning territorial expansion or strategic advantage. You're planning global conquest. The boy who was born holding a blood clot in his fist is about to attempt something not a human being has ever achieved, ruling the entire known world. The terrifying thing is, you're starting to believe it's possible. Bukhara burns, and you watch from a hilltop as 500 years of civilization turns to smoke. The city that called itself the Dome of Islam is dying in front of you, and you're the one who lit the match. Libraries that housed the wisdom of ages, markets that connected continents, mosques where scholars debated theology with mathematicians, all of it reduced to ash because someone made the mistake of killing your ambassadors. My lord, J.B. approaches, his face grim beneath the soot and sweat. The palace quarter has fallen. No survivors. No survivor. A phrase that follows your army like a shadow now. When you give cities the chance to surrender, some do and prosper under your protection. But when they choose resistance, casualty reports, minimal, my lord. The siege engines performed exactly as projected. Once the walls were breached, resistance collapsed within hours. This has become your signature. Overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. You don't waste time on prolonged sieges anymore. Your engineers have perfected techniques that can reduce any fortification to rubble in days rather than months. Your psychological warfare convinces defenders that resistance is hopeless before the first arrow is fired. It's efficient, it's effective, and it's turning you into something your younger self wouldn't recognize. What about Samarkand? Word of Bukhara's fall reached them yesterday. They're requesting terms. Of course they are. This is the strategy behind the overwhelming violence. Make the cost of resistance so terrible that rational enemies surrender rather than face your army. Every city you destroy sends a message to 10 others that submission is preferable to annihilation. But the message comes at a price measured in civilizations. You ride down into what remains of Bukhara's merchant quarter. Yesterday this was one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the known world. Silk traders from China, spice merchants from India, gold dealers from Africa, all conducting business in markets that had operated continuously for centuries. Now it's empty streets filled with smoke and silence. The libraries? You ask, though you already know the answer from JB's expression. Gone, my lord. Everything burned when the palace quarter fell. Gone. hundreds of thousands of books, medical texts that contained cures for diseases your people don't even have names for, mathematical treatises that pushed the boundaries of human knowledge, poetry that captured the dreams of civilizations you're erasing, all turned to ash because their owners chose to resist rather than submit. You dismount and walk through streets that yesterday bustled with life from across the known world. Persian carpets lie burned in doorways, Chinese porcelain litters the ground in fragments, Arabic manuscripts scatter in the wind like expensive confetti. This is what conquest looks like at your level, not just defeating armies, but ending entire ways of life. A movement in one of the damaged buildings catches your attention. You signal for JB to investigate, and he returns with a young woman clutching a child. Survivors. The city that suffered complete destruction actually has survivors, because total annihilation is harder to achieve than your reputation suggests. Please, she whispers in Arabic, then switches to broken Mongolian. Child, innocent. You look at her for a long moment. This woman represents everything you're fighting against and everything you're trying to build. She's a remnant of the civilization you've just destroyed, but she could also become a citizen of the empire you're creating. Can you read? You ask in Arabic. She nods, confused by the question. Any languages besides Arabic? Persian, my lord. Some Chinese. My father was a translator. A translator. Someone who spent their life building bridges between cultures, helping different peoples understand each other. Exactly the kind of person your empire needs. You're under my protection now, you tell her. Your child too. Report to my administrators tomorrow. We have work for people with your skills. She stares at you in shock. The barbarian conqueror who just destroyed her city is offering her employment in his government. This is the contradiction that defines your empire. You destroy the old world with terrifying efficiency, but you build something new from the pieces. The scholars whose libraries you burn become advisors in your administration. The soldiers whose armies you crush become officers in your forces. The merchants whose cities you conquer become the backbone of trade networks that span continents. You're not just conquering territory, you're synthesizing civilizations. But the synthesis requires the destruction to come first, and that destruction is measured in bodies. Final count, you ask as you remount your horse. Approximately 40,000 civilian casualties. Military losses were lighter. Most surrendered once the walls fell. 40,000 people who woke up this morning in one of the world's great cities and died before sunset because their leaders chose resistance over submission. 40,000 individual tragedies that add up to one strategic victory in your campaign for global conquest. The mathematics of empire. Personal tragedies multiplied until they become mere statistics. And Samarkand's response. They've opened their gates, my lord. Complete surrender. They're requesting terms for integration into the empire. Smart choice. Samarkand will survive to become one of the crown jewels of your empire. Its markets and universities intact. Its people prosperous under your protection. All because they learned the lesson that Bukhara paid 40,000 lives to teach. As you ride away from the burning city, you catch a glimpse of yourself in a polished shield discarded in the street. The face looking back at you is harder than the one that started this campaign. The eyes are colder. The expression is that of someone who's grown comfortable making decisions that end civilizations. You're becoming exactly what the world needs you to become. The kind of ruler who can forge a global empire from the fragments of conquered nations. But you're also becoming exactly what your enemies claim you are. A destroyer of worlds who counts cities in ashes and measures progress in mass graves. The boy who was born clutching a blood clot has learned to paint continents red. And the terrifying thing is, you're just getting started. You stand on the balcony of a palace in Samarkand and look out over an empire that shouldn't exist. The maps in your study show territories marked in red ink from Korea to the Caspian Sea, from Siberia to the Persian Gulf. 2 years ago, most of these places were names you couldn't pronounce belonging to civilizations you'd never heard of. Now they're all provinces of an empire that spans continents. 20 million people wake up each morning under your rule. They speak dozens of languages, worship different gods, follow customs that would seem alien to each other, but they all answer to the same supreme authority, you. The sheer impossibility of it should be overwhelming. My lord. So Bowtie enters with the daily reports that have become your morning ritual. Dispatches from the regional governors. The regional governors, men who were your enemies 3 years ago, and are now your most trusted administrators. Former Chinese generals, maintaining order in territories that were independent kingdoms last year. Persian nobles collecting taxes for an empire they never imagined would exist. Korean princes sending tribute from lands your grandfather couldn't have found on a map. China, stable tax collection ahead of projections. The integration of former Jin military units is complete. They're requesting deployment to the western frontier. Integration. Your former enemies are now volunteering to fight your new enemy. Chinese cavalry who fought against you are now eager to help you conquer Persia. The speed of this transformation still amazes you. Casualties from the latest Khwarezmian operations. Light, my lord. The psychological warfare continues to be more effective than direct combat. Most cities are surrendering rather than facing siege. This is the pattern that's emerged across your conquests. Overwhelming demonstration of force followed by generous terms for submission. Cities that resist face complete destruction. Cities that surrender become prosperous centers of trade and administration under your protection. You're not just conquering territory, you're offering a choice between annihilation and prosperity. Most rational leaders choose prosperity. Persian Gulf campaign. The coastal cities have submitted. Naval operations are being organized by former Khwarezmian officers who understand local conditions. They're recommending expansion into the Indian Ocean trade routes. Indian Ocean trade routes. 3 years ago, you didn't know the Indian Ocean existed. Now you're planning to control international commerce across waters your people have never seen. The scope of your ambitions keeps expanding because the scope of what seems possible keeps expanding. You walk to the great map that dominates one wall of your study. Colored pins mark the positions of armies scattered across a geographic area larger than any previous empire in human history. Each pin represents forces that can operate independently for months, while remaining part of your larger strategic vision. Red pins in China, maintaining control over 50 million people. Blue pins in Central Asia, securing trade routes that generate more wealth than most kingdoms possess. Green pins moving west toward Europe, exploring territories that exist only in the stories of merchants and the nightmares of distant kings. Your empire now stretches farther than Alexander's, commands more resources than Rome's, and controls more territory than any human institution in history. And you're not finished. Intelligence reports from Europe, limited, my lord. Scouting parties have made contact with Hungarian and Polish forces. Initial assessments suggest military doctrine similar to what we encountered in Khwarezmia: heavy cavalry, fortified positions, siege warfare. Nothing that should present significant tactical challenges. Europe, the mysterious western continent where different tribes have been fighting each other for centuries without any central authority emerging victorious. A patchwork of small kingdoms and competing nobles who've never faced coordinated conquest by an external power. They might be about to learn what that feels like. Timeline for European deployment. Advanced scouts are already moving. Main force deployment possible within 18 months. Complete conquest, difficult to estimate without better intelligence, but the political fragmentation suggests individual kingdoms won't be able to coordinate effective resistance. Individual kingdoms. The phrase captures why Europe will fall to you if you decide to take it. Every king fighting for his own territory. Every noble protecting his own interests, every army defending its own borders. They've never faced an enemy who can coordinate attacks across continents while maintaining supply lines that stretch across the known world. When you attack Europe, you won't be coming as a single army that can be met in one decisive battle. You'll be coming as a coordinated invasion force striking simultaneously from multiple directions, while your enemies are still trying to figure out who's attacking them. But here's what the maps don't show you. What the intelligence reports can't capture: the crushing psychological weight of ruling an empire this vast. Every morning you wake up knowing that 20 million people are counting on your decisions for their survival. Every policy you implement affects more human lives than most rulers encounter in their entire kingdoms. Every mistake you make ripples across continents. The responsibility is suffocating. My lord, Sabotai continues, there's also the matter of succession planning that requires your attention. Succession planning. The phrase that keeps you awake at night because it forces you to confront an uncomfortable truth. What you've built is so unprecedented that there's no established way to maintain it. Previous empires were built around single cultures, single languages, single systems of government. Your empire spans dozens of civilizations that have nothing in common except submission to your authority. When you die, what holds this together? Your sons are capable military commanders, but they're not you. They haven't lived through the transformation from tribal chief to world conqueror. They've grown up as princes of an empire rather than warriors who built one from nothing. Can they maintain control over Chinese bureaucrats and Persian nobles and Korean princes simultaneously? Can they balance the competing interests of dozens of different cultures while continuing military expansion across new continents? The empire you've created might be too large for any single person to govern effectively. The succession question can wait, you say, but you both know it can't wait much longer. Every day you delay this decision is another day closer to a potential civil war that could tear apart everything you've accomplished. You return to studying the map, tracing the routes your armies have carved across the world. Each colored line represents thousands of miles of conquest, millions of people brought under your rule, entire civilizations transformed by your vision of universal empire. But the map also shows you something else. How impossibly thin your control really is. Your empire is vast, but your actual Mongol population is tiny. Maybe 2 million Mongols governing 20 million conquered peoples across territories so large that messages take months to travel from one end to the other. You're maintaining control through a combination of military reputation, administrative efficiency, and the constant threat of overwhelming retaliation against resistance. It's an incredible system, but it's also incredibly fragile. If the Chinese provinces revolt simultaneously while you're campaigning in Europe, can you respond quickly enough to prevent total collapse? If your Persian governors decide to declare independence while your main armies are scattered across 3 continents, do you have enough loyal forces to maintain control? You've created the largest empire in human history, but you've also created the largest potential catastrophe in human history. The morning briefings continue. Reports from Korea about tribute to deliveries, updates from the Caspian region about new trade route developments, intelligence assessments about political situations in territories you'd never heard of 5 years ago. Each report represents a success that should be impossible. You're simultaneously governing settled agricultural civilizations and nomadic tribal confederations. You're collecting taxes from people who use completely different monetary systems. You're maintaining military discipline among armies that speak dozens of different languages. Any one of these challenges should be insurmountable. You're managing all of them simultaneously while planning the conquest of new continents. The scope of what you've accomplished is so far beyond normal human experience that sometimes you wonder if you're losing touch with reality. Can one person really control this much of the world? Are you actually governing 20 million people, or have you created an elaborate illusion that could collapse the moment you make a serious mistake? But then the tribute arrives from China, confirming that yes, you actually do control the world's most populous civilization. The tax revenues arrive from Persia, confirming that yes, you actually do govern territories that were independent empires last year. The intelligence reports arrive from your advanced scouts in Europe, confirming that yes, you actually are planning to conquer an entire continent that most of your subjects don't know exists. This isn't an illusion. This is the new reality you've created through 20 years of constant warfare and impossible victories. You've become something unprecedented in human history, a person who actually rules most of the known world while actively planning to conquer the rest of it. The weight of universal rule isn't just about managing territory or commanding armies. It's about carrying the responsibility for reshaping human civilization itself. Every decision you make influences how millions of people live, what cultures survive, which technologies spread, how different civilizations interact with each other. You're not just conquering the world, you're deciding what kind of world emerges from your conquests. And tomorrow you'll wake up and do it all again, because stopping isn't an option when you're building an empire that spans continents. Sweet dreams, Chinggis Khan. Your impossible empire continues to grow, defying every rule about what mortals can achieve. And somewhere in the vastness of your conquests, the weight of ruling the world presses down on shoulders that were never meant to carry such responsibility.